Now, another great difference between var and let and const would be the fact that let and const are block scope and var are function scope. Now, in this video, we're going to look at a example with a let, but just know that const is going to work exactly the same. So variables defined using let and const are considered block scope, and block would be considered anything within a curly braces. So first, let's look at a function scope, and then we're going to look at a block scope. So first things first, let's figure out where we have the global scope. So global scope, and the global scope would be anywhere for now with a var outside a function. So this would be a global scope. Or if I'm going to create a function and I'm going to say that the function name is going to be, let's imagine, greeting. Now within a function, I'm going to have the variable and I'm going to use the var to declare the variable. And let's say here we're going to write a comment of local scope. So this would be the local scope. And let's say var value, and the value is going to be equal to hello. Now there is no way for me to access this outside the function. So if we're going to do a console log and we're going to try to console log the value, it's going to say that there's a reference error because this variable is sitting in a local scope. It's not sitting in a global scope, which is good because that means that we can create a variable of value outside. So if we're going to do var value, and we can maybe assign it to, let's say, 100, and then we can reuse it as 100. Now, again, this is not the best case scenario where we're having a global variables to begin with, but it's the good thing because we can create another function with a var name value or anything else, and we're not going to be accessing them. So there's no way for us to access it apart from being within this function scope. Now, it would work the same way with a let. So let me just copy and paste this, and let's see what we have with a let. So if we're going to have, instead of greeting, we're going to call this a greeting1, and then here we're going to use again let, and instead of the value now outside, maybe let's use something else. Let's say that we would want to greet, just because I obviously don't want to use two variables over here, because still this is going to be even with a let in a global scope. So here if we're going to use the greet, again, notice that the greet is going to be 100, not a hello. Now, if we're going to console log it from the local scope, and if we're going to write for the greet, then we're going to be getting back the hello. Now, we just need to run it. Now, obviously, we're just declaring the function, so we would need to run the function. So if I'm going to run the function of greet, and here let's write that we were running actually the greet, so greet1. And once we invoke the function, we said that greet1 is not defined. And because the reason for that is it's not greeting, it's greet. That's what I'm calling. So sure enough, I can console log the variable that I have within my function once I run the function. However, I cannot access it from the outside. If we're going to, again, if we're going to comment out the actual greet variable, notice that we're going to have, instead of 100, we should be having a undefined. So let's do again console log, and here we're console logging the greet, not a value. That's why we got 100, and then we have reference error. Greet is not defined. So the greet that is sitting within a function again is not accessible for us from the outside because the greet that we created here in the global scope is different than the greet that is within the local scope of the function. So where does a block scope come in? So let's go lower in our document and let's figure out how we can test this. So let's have it as a variable of test, and let's set it equal to true. So we know that this is always going to be true, Boolean value, everything is working fine. Then we're going to have another variable of name of total, and let's set it equal to 1000. So let's say this is some kind of variable that we're using throughout the document calculating, I don't know, the salaries or something. So now let's do a test. So if and else statement, the condition is going to be the test. Now I'm passing the test and I know that's true. So I know for 100% this is going to run because this is Boolean value of true. Now here we're going to create another variable and we're going to say total. And let's say that in this if statement, we were calculating some kind of fruits and vegetables or something, and we had oranges and onion. So again, the same variable name. However, now the value is completely different. So if we're relying on the fact that this was a total somewhere down in the document, we might come for a surprise. Because if I'm going to do right now a simple log, so let's do log, and let's say and the total salary is, and then we're going to put a colon, and let's see what happens. So we'll have a total, and what do we have? Well, first of all, we actually need to comment this out, the grid, because we cannot access the grid. So let me comment out, and the total salary is oranges and onion. Now, for those of you who like to receive the salary, would you like to get oranges or onion, or would you like to get 1,000? Would you agree that this is a little bit different than what we had before? And again, the reason for that this is a block scope, and the var variable is not blocked scope. So everything that we declare within these curly braces is in fact a global variable. Let me prove this to you. Let's do again console log, and we know that all the global variables are attached as a property to a window object. So let's see what we have as window total. So once we save it, of course, we have the oranges and onion. Now let and const fixes that, because everything that we're going to use within the curly braces, in fact, is going to be attached to the block scope, and we can reuse as many block scopes as we would like. So again, let's do the same thing where we have the same variables and the names. Now we're going to have to change something around, and once we run it, then let's change again the test. It cannot be the same, so let's do let test is going to be 2. This is going to be equal to true. Then this is going to be, instead of total, this is going to be the amount. Again, we just need to write a different variable names because we cannot reuse them anyway. So this would spit an error anyway. The amount is going to be 1,000. Then we're checking for a test of 2. Now in this case, we're going to use let. So let, and in this case, we just want to reuse the amount. Just for sure, we know that we are not setting up a global variable. And in this case, we have oranges and onion. And then let's see what we have, and the total salary is, and let's do an amount first. And let's see also whether the global window object, does it have the property of amount. And once we run it, we have the total salary is 1,000. So just like we expected when we declared before, and undefined for a global property. So we know that it's working, that within a block scope, we can reuse the variable. So I can do something like this. So I can just create a block scope by its own. So let total. Now the total in this case again is going to be like 2,000 over here. Again, we can create another block scope, and then we're going to be writing that let total. And again, we can reuse the const also, but I'm just showing you with let because there's no point of rewriting this with const. And then again, we're going to say oranges. So the point of this, that neither of them know the existence of the other one. So we can reuse this. We don't have to come up with some unique variable names just so they wouldn't be colliding. In fact, everything that's going to be within a curly braces, we're going to have a local scope, so we can only access them here. So if I'm going to do console log of total, and also over here of total, well, we should be getting exactly the variables that we're writing. So total and total, and then we have 2,000, and we have the oranges. So this is why you should be using let and const instead of var. And one last thing that I would want to show you, the difference between var and let, was the fact that we could access the variable even before it was declared. So let's do, if we had a console log, and console log, let's say some kind of variable name. We have used the total, we have used the var, let's say Udemy. Or, however, we are just gonna be naming this Udemy somewhere lower than a console log statement. So again, we can do var Udemy, and let's set it equal to something. Let's say some kind of value of I don't know, true, or Udemy, I don't know, is the best, something like this. Let me uncomment or comment out everything so it's not in our way, and let's see what we have. So once I console log it, you notice I'm still getting undefined. So I still can access it. However, I cannot get the value, because what happened was that with the var, whenever we defined a variables with the var, they were hoisted all the way to the top of the document. However, only the declaration, not the value. So we still could get undefined. Now there's a difference with a let. So if we're gonna again do the same thing, let me just comment out the Udemy part for now, and let's again copy and paste this, and let's do the same thing with a let. So let's do with a console log instead of Udemy, or you know what, let's do Udemy and just let's do let, and let's comment this guy out. And let's see what happens if we try to do that with let. And here it says reference error. Udemy is not defined. So we cannot do it anymore where we had previously, where we could still look for the value, but it could mislead us by giving us the undefined because we haven't added the value yet. So we were still able to access the variable declaration. However, we're not able to access the actual value of the variable. Now let and const changes that, where if we're trying to access the variable before it has been declared and the value has been assigned, or just declared, because we can still have the, let's say, the empty value, then we're not going to be able to do this. So these are the reasons why you should be using the let and const instead of var.